Hello, everybody out there in UFO and paranormal world. You're listening to United Public Radio Network, FM 105.3 and 107.7 globally. And we mean globally like 200 platforms. And it's out of beautiful New Orleans. The show is Strange Reality with Dave Emmons. It's also called the UFO Paranormal Network. So let's put that all together for you. Glad to have you. I got a great guest. We talked before. Great lady. I love this gal and her wife. They're both tremendous, intelligent people, good writers, and they've written, oh my God, so much stuff. We were talking about trying to crowd this all in our show, but listen up. We're going to try to do it. Cheryl says she's going to work with me, and I'll keep my mouth shut with a lot of things. Okay, Cheryl. She's a career data analyst. Cheryl is also a two-service military veteran. Thank you for your service. And U.S. Air Force, U.S. Navy, and a retired professional from aerospace industry. Cheryl, as a journalist, wrote the wildly popular UFO column New York Skies for Syracuse. I'm not New Yorker, so I messed up on that word. Syracuse NewTimes.com, 2013 to 2019. She holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from the State University of New York at Empire State College in entertainment, writing, and production. She was awarded Researcher of the Year 2018 by the International UFO Congress. And after you hear what she and her wife has done, you're going to know that she's a researcher. Now, her co-author, her wife, Linda Miller Costa, she has a BA in psychology from Case Western Reserve University and a library science master's from the University of Maryland. Head librarian at Environmental Protection Agency, toxicology library for 15 years. After a career in scientific research and publishing in Washington, D.C., she retired from Lemoyne College Library in Syracuse, New York. She is currently publisher of Dragon Lady Media's UFO Scholar and Sky Goddess imprints. So you can see where these two have gotten so much talent together, and they work so well together. They've got several books, many books. I think that if you look back in the background, you got, I can list them all, but I'm going to let Cheryl do that.
54 books on
yes.
UFOs.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. And go ahead and finish out the intro, because I want you to get everything in here that we can, because you have some fabulous information.
Okay. The short
Cheryl
story.
Costa.
Thank you. The short story is, back when I was writing my column, I had to have something to write about every week.
Right.
And the goofy thing is, people thought, wow, it should be fun to write a column every week. And the way I had to explain it to people is, it's 1,000-word term paper every Thursday.
Yeah.
So I had to have something to write about. So we started adding up numbers in New York State, which at that time was my beat as far as a newspaper column was concerned. And we started seeing patterns that were outside what, quote, the established UFO, what's the word? Folklore would tell you, this is where the hot spots are.
Right.
And we were finding them in very different places. Okay. And what we found was important. So we started putting it together, and we decided to do a book about the United States. Linda, it was October in 2015, and we had already showed preliminary data for New York State to a couple of other investigators, and they were saying, we didn't know this was here, that was there, or, that type of thing. So Linda and I were sitting in a pub in October of 2015, and we were talking about, like, look at all the cool stuff we found, and Linda looked at me and says, why don't we do the whole country? And I looked at her like, we're sitting there with our pints going, I don't know about this. That's a big job. Uh-huh. And we figured it would take a year. It took 18 months worth of weekends to put it together. Okay. And when it got out there, one of the people who took interest in it was Ralph Blumenthal at the New York Times. And the story I heard was, he went into his editors with 2 copies of the White Book. It's called UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2015. Mm-hmm. And he brought it in, threw the copies on his editor's desk, and says, I know why we don't report UFOs. And he says, it's all anecdotal, it's all stories, it's all hearsay. 2 old ladies in Syracuse did the science. So they did this huge Science magazine article on us. It ran on April 24th, 25th, 2017. And my God, suddenly my home office and all the offices at the Syracuse New Times were flooded with phone calls from editors and news directors all over the planet. It was nuts for about a week. But the deal is, we figured when we got to at the end of 2020, Linda and I set out to not prove anything like a lot of people do. We set out to measure the phenomena. Okay. And that's something nobody had done. Everything was case studies. Everybody was looking at individual autopsies. Mm-hmm. We decided to look at a bigger disease model, as they say. And this is Linda is bringing that to the paper. She's got the real science degrees. Me, I've got an arts and entertainment degree. I've got the top hat and the cane.
Yeah, I was gonna say Linda is a co-author and writer with you, and she works with you. And she doesn't do the radio like you do a lot, but she is the spouse with the wind beneath your wings.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, the other thing is because she was the brain, she said, this is how we're going to do it to scientific standards. Okay. Now what was my background? Yeah, I set up arts and entertainment. I spent a long time in the Navy doing gathering intelligence. Okay. It was part of what I did. And that's as much as I can tell you about what I did. Yeah. But then I did analyzing work. And then when I went to work for Lockheed Martin, had a 32-year career there, I did analysis work. I mean, I did other things, but analysis was a huge part of my job. So I knew how to break down numbers. I knew how to use the tools to do it. And one of the benefits we had for doing this is there were two national databases, MUFON's database and National UFO Reporting's database. And we said, Linda said basically, why don't we use the tools of big data to really get a picture of this? And her argument was, let's do the 21st century, because the view was everybody thinks that everything before 2000 was the golden age of UFOs. From 1960 to 2000, it amounted to 15,150 reported sightings to MUFON and NUFORC combined. Okay. From 2001 to 2020, remember I said 15,150.
Yes.
From 2001 to 2020, it was 167,632 sightings. So if that's the golden age, baby, we are in the diamond age.
So what you're saying overall, this is increasing, and that's what I've been hearing, and the government's even alarmed about it. So
it's on a steep curve. It still follows the 7-year cycle going up and down, up and down. Everybody knows it all tanked out about 2017, 2018. And people were calling me up. They were calling George Knapp up and saying, oh, they went home. Space Force chased them away. You know, I heard every reason why they went away. And I kept telling them, folks, they'll be back. The numbers will be back in the next year or so. And in spring of 2020, I get a call from George Knapp and he says, hey, my phone's ringing off the hook. How about you? I said, I took the time off. I'm working on other projects. Let me take a look. I had a mathematical model for what the numbers should be. I dropped into 2 months worth of data from the National UFO Reporting Center as a sample into the model. And we came within 2% of what the year's numbers were for 2020. And the goofy thing about that was, how do I want to say this? It was huge. I mean, I called him back an hour later and he says, hey, if this is going to hold up, we're going to have the best year since 2012, which was a peak year. Okay. And that's what we got. I don't
want to ask you too many questions, but
go ahead.
You're saying this is cyclic. These.
Oh yeah. Okay. The easy way to see it, especially I put the print in our book series, our state book series. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. I got the number. I didn't put the data into my databases. We weren't interested in that data, but we got the numbers from MUFON and NUFORC, and I ran a chart. And you see this chart from 1960 to 2000, the year 2000, and you see this 6 to 7 year little cycle, this little humpy thing, up and down, up and down, up and down. Okay. And a lot of us that were really serious researchers knew that there was this cycle out there every 6 to 7, 8 years, humping like that. And it was just a known for anybody who was really geeking on the data.
Have you ever come up with a reason why it's so cyclic every so often?
We've heard everything. I wrote an article about it. We got all kinds of mail telling us everything, you know. Of course, Linda's attitude is kind of joking. She has the attitude, that's when they go back every 7 years to get the new model spacecraft, you know. So, you know, the new model years, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so 21st century, we are on hot numbers right now. Okay. And presently the numbers are, I'm not doing any data work with it right now, but I've gone out and looked at the rough scale of things. And the numbers are huge. Now, people ask me when 2001, we came out with our second data book, 2001 to 2020. It's called the UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2020. It's the pink book. If you go on Amazon and look for the UFO Sightings Desk Reference, there's two. There's a white book for 2001 to 2015 and one from 2001 to 2020. It's bright pink. Why is it pink? Some people told us we might be called in front of Congress to testify since we were the only people who'd ever done data analysis.
Well, you two should be. You and Linda both should be in those Senate hearings.
Everybody says that.
Yeah.
Okay. But we haven't been called yet, but we're prepared for it. Okay. But when we were talking about it, after they asked us about this, and they asked us about this back in 2019, and understand that both of us had been federal contractors. And you work your whole career not to have to testify before Congress, you know? So we're sitting there thinking about this, and we said, okay, we're going to be on C-SPAN. You know, we know what we lived in DC for 30 years each, you know, we know what it looks like. And we said, they're going to be up there thumbing through papers and things. We want them to know that this book was made by a couple of women. Okay. So we made the thing bright pink. You can, you can flag in aircraft with this thing.
That's it.
Okay.
That's it.
So that was what we set out to do. And when we were working on it in 2020, we found out that 3.5% of the data, which is probably around 6,000 records, did not enter a city. We found another 7.5%. They didn't spell the name of their city right.
So that's research, right?
And a lot of it didn't have the county data. So we had to build automation to put the county data in, and you had to have the correct spelling. Otherwise you didn't get the right thing. So in August of 2020, hey, we were all dressed up with no place to go. Remember, you know, so, I sat down, and it was like going back to work at Lockheed again. Suddenly I was up every morning, got my coffee, and I was hammering it for about 7 to 8 hours every day, 5 days a week. Did that for 850 hours, took us to the first week of January of 2021. And I went in there an average of 500 to 1,500 records a day and fixed it. And I had like a golden mail list to correct the city spellings, correct the counties. We added lat longitude. We had added zip code. Zip code taught us something. Zip codes showed us things that we did not anticipate. One of the things people say, where is the hotspot, Cheryl? And I say, by state, by county. Well, give me an example. By county, there are around 3,135 counties. Okay. Of that, over the 20-year period, only 150 counties in the United States did not report UFO, not 150, I'm sorry, 105 counties in the United States did not report UFOs. And for the most part, when we went looking into those counties, they were rural, had very little or no rural broadband, and they were usually relatively poor. Funny, who knew?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just want to tell the audience, Cheryl, that you and Linda have done so much work. And I know I've written a book and several, and I know how much work it is. But what you've done is phenomenal. All this data and all this records that you went through. And people that are looking for disclosure, listen to Cheryl and Linda, what they've done, and listen to that. Okay.
The other thing we did in 2020, we were planning to, we knew that if we tried, people were saying, well, why did you go down to just the state and the county level? We want to know about our little village or whatever. And we did a sample sample PDF to see what it would be. And it amounted to about, well, let's say it this way, printed out on paper, it would have been 1.5 feet thick. You can't publish a book like that. Okay, well, you can, but nobody's going to buy it, So we decided we were going to, told Linda, I said, I'm going to publish 50 individual state books. She thought I was nuts. Okay. And if you watch some of the convention tapes where we were out presenting together, she would literally tell the audience she thought I was nuts.
Okay. Now there is one group of people though that will read a book that thick within one day. That's Congress. They say read it. They said just vote on it first without reading it. That's one group that will. Okay. So here's the deal. We decided to do 50 individual state books with the idea that we could drill down to the zip code and village level for those books. And of course, that first book took us a long time to do, but we got better with the pink book. So I decided to build the books modular. What we decided to do is one part of the book would have all the research papers that we wrote in that. So you can get real smart if you want to read scientific research papers. And then what we would do is make the second half of the book just the data about a specific state. And the way we did it is we got all those reports together, burned a PDF of a thing, did the same thing with all the research, all the state data, got all the charts, graphs, and tables, burned a PDF of that, and then put them all together in one big Adobe file and shipped it up to Amazon. Now, we built them over a period of 18 months, almost 2 years, got them all ready to go, got all the data ready to go. And then last Halloween, 2022, Halloween, we launched the first one, which was UFOs in Ohio and where to find them. They're all named the same thing, except the name of the state's different. We kind of plugged into that Harry Potter Fantastic Beasts and where to find them kind of thing, So if you're going up onto Amazon, go up on the Amazon and say UFOs in your state and where to find them. Don't just say UFOs in your state, but if you say UFOs in Colorado and where to find them, you will get the book. And all of them are priced under $20. Most of them are around $12. The top 10 states like New York and Florida and Texas and California are up about $18. But we minimized the profit on the thing so that they were cheap and available to buy. Okay. Now the 50 state books, here's what the high level data sounds like. Okay. Oh, now I have had some people buy the book and then complain on Amazon and give us like a 1 star or 2 stars saying they didn't have any sighting stories. We don't do sighting stories. We do charts, tables, and numbers. We are statistics. Okay, so we're not a storybook. The other thing people would complain about, well, I bought my state's book, but there wasn't any sightings for my town. Well, if somebody didn't report them, we can't report them. Yeah, true.
Okay, all right. 2001 to 2020. Get your pencils out, kids. You're going to want this. 2001 to 2020, 167,632 reported sightings between the two databases. That averages out to about 8,400 a year. It averages out to 700 a month, about 161 per week, and an average of 23 per day nationally. All those were national numbers. Now, serious researchers will tell you 70, maybe 80% is noise. It's junk. It's what's the word they use? Explainable. Explainable is the word I hear all the time. Okay. So if we let's throw 70% away and just take that 30% that researchers will tell you. Okay. That 167,632 comes down to about 50,289 for the 20 years, about 2,500 a year, about 210 a month, and about 4 a week. Now that 210 a month, that's an important number. Think about this. That's potentially the real thing. 210 of them a month in the United States, every month for 240 months of 20 years. Now that's something to write home about.
Yeah, Cheryl, have you gotten any information from like the Pentagon since you worked with all this stuff? Do you have any contacts that might tell you the numbers of
No. But I do have one number, and I'll get to that in a minute. Okay. Now, there are people who come to me and say, "Hey, Cheryl," and most of them are news directors and editors at newspapers. They think they know it all because they're smart. Okay. All right. They tell me, well, they can't get here from there. I do a talk someplace like at a high school or out here at a college or something like that. And there's always some science teacher. They can't get here from there. They can't violate the laws of physics. I hear this all the time.
Yeah.
And I always look back at them and say, in 1897, they discovered particle physics. In 1898 or something like that, or 99, the first papers on quantum physics were talked about. But prior to that, physicists thought they had it all figured out. Okay, so we're learning new stuff all the time. Okay, for the people who need a nightlight and want to feel secure that they're very rare. Okay, 1% of that 167,632 ends up being about 1,674 for 20 years, ends up being 84 per year. And if these are the real starships that are visiting the USA, it's 7 per month each month for 240 months of 20 years.
But you believe the numbers are higher though, right? I mean, in a way.
Yeah. Okay. Now, here's my model for that. I look back at Blue Book and I looked back at the ONDI report recently. Okay. And their numbers of unexplainable were 5%. Okay. So, and I wrote an article sometime back recently that said, Cheryl's opinion is 5%. Okay. Okay. What's that 5% work out to? It works out to basically about 882 for 20 years. I'm sorry, 419 for 20 years. I'm sorry. I'm going to correct myself. I'm sorry. It's been a long day. That 5% from the major number, 167,632, 5% would be 8,382. Okay. For 20 years. Or about 419 per year, about 35 per month. That's 35 a month for 240 months of 20 years, about 8 per week, and about 1.14 per day. Okay. 5% seems to be that golden number. I mean, ONDI report said 5% they couldn't explain. Project Blue Book, about 5% they couldn't explain. So let's go with 5%. There you go. About basically, if you want to tell your friends, hey, based on current data and information, 35 starships a month are showing up in the United States. And they have been for 20 years.
And that's provable. Those are real numbers. I mean,
those are real numbers.
I suspect they're higher, and so do you, because you're a ufologist also. And so am I. So I suspect those numbers are greater. I mean, not counting the little orbs in the sky, but something that comes down low enough for you to take a good look at the craft.
Well, there's some, what they call the usual traffic. Now, people ask me hotspots. Let's do a quick one on hotspots.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Okay, California is the #1 state for UFOs. Florida is #2. Texas is #3. After that, they've been that way since 2006. After that, the next 7 of the top 10 play musical chairs, except for Arizona. It has been consistently #7 for years for some reason. Okay, the top counties in the United States, top 2. Los Angeles County. Now, people think, wait a minute, Los Angeles, it's got light pollution. The county is a very big place. Downtown LA, it's light pollution city. But the county is a huge area. And I'll get into that trick about counties in a minute. The second county, let me say what counties, Los Angeles County has more sightings reported in the 20-year period than 39 individual states. Wow. The states by themselves. Okay. The other county, #2, is Maricopa County, and that's in Arizona, essentially the Phoenix metropolitan area. And they have more sightings than 36 individual states. Okay. Now, Get your pencils out again. The number one zip code, if you're looking for hotspots based on zip code, the number one zip code in the country is 85001. 85001. That is downtown Phoenix.
Right downtown Phoenix?
Downtown Phoenix, yeah.
Whoa.
That zip code is downtown Phoenix. There are other zip codes in the bigger metropolitan area and county area of Maricopa County, but that's the key one right there. That's number one. But even with that, it was like 1,473 over 20 years sightings, and it averaged out to about 5 or 6 a month. So even if you want to go do a camping party and rent the penthouse in some hotel and wait for them, a couple television producers came to me and wanted to do that. Yeah. I said, guys, you're going to be burning your producer's credit card to smithereens here, because it's only 5 or 6 a month, and you got to be looking in the right direction, Okay, now here's the other big discoveries we made. And now there are going to be people in the audience that are expecting that the drivers and influencers for UFO sightings have got to be this drastically exotic thing. Okay. Something really exotic, like radioactive dumps or something. Okay. Not really. It's as much about human activity as it is the UFOs. All right. The drivers. Every state has these 5 drivers. Population is a driver. Yes, we concede it is. Temperate weather is a driver. You've got to be nice weather to see them. Okay. Leisure time. We proved this out in a national laboratory, March and April 2020. We were on Coast to Coast with George Knapp, and we made this up and we told this out. And he said, wait a minute, Cheryl, we're getting ready to go into some kind of played lockdown here. That's going to be a perfect national laboratory. Yeah. And March and April were through the roof. Okay. Now, leisure time is important. Hours of darkness are critical. We discovered this when we started looking at the hours of the day that things are sighted, and then looked at it with zip codes. So imagine a chart that starts with 1 o'clock in the morning, going all the way out to midnight at the other end. 68 to 75% of the sightings happen between 6 o'clock at night and 11:30, with 80% of that happening between 8:30 and 10:30 at night. The other 16 hours a day, from 1 o'clock in the morning to about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, only represented about 25 to 30% of the sightings. Okay. Now, again, people say, but Cheryl, the big cities, more eyes on the sky, they say to me. But what we found out was when you look at it by time, remember I said it was at 6 o'clock at night to about 11:30. I'll give you an example here in Cleveland, Ohio, where I live now. Okay. Downtown Cleveland, they've got the big numbers. You look right across the hours of the day, 1 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock at night. They got big numbers. If you look at the rest of the zip codes in the county, almost nothing between 1 o'clock in the morning and about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. But after 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the numbers in the suburbs, the bedroom communities, the unincorporated communities further out, the rural communities further out in the county, that's where all the sighting numbers are. Okay. So the driver is hours of darkness. But if you look at it from the idea of leisure time, you got to be home to see these things. You come home from work downtown in the big city. Hey, honey, let's go to Bible study. Okay. They go to Bible study. They come out 9 o'clock at night. Hey, honey, look at that. That's what we're dealing with. People come home from work. They go to the supermarket, come out in the parking lot. Hey, honey, look at that. That's what this is. Yeah,
you are so right, because that's when I've seen my UFOs between
Same here.
Time, 8 o'clock until about 11:30 at night.
Yeah. And people always say to me, Cheryl, why didn't you take out your camera? I was so mesmerized by this ephemeral thing that I was only going to see for maybe 30 seconds. I didn't have time to pull out my phone. In fact, one of the best sightings I ever saw of a wedgie, one of those wedge-shaped ones. We were on the St. Lawrence on the American side, looking over the Canadian side just after sunset, just after civil twilight. And there it was, lights along the edges of it, kind of like the Shepperson pictures, that kind of thing. And and there it was, and it was turning and was coming over across the city onto the American side. I had my diabetic book where I log my numbers. I just took my big felt tip and just drew it. Looked at my watch, wrote down the time, and that's the only record I have of the sighting. Okay. Now, so we got population, temperate weather, leisure time, hours of darkness, and observer access to broadband.
Really? Broadband tracks.
You got to be able to report it.
Yeah.
Nobody does it by phone anymore. They try to do it online, and the two national reporting services have online interfaces.
What about these counties that have military bases like nuclear missile silos?
No, wait a minute. Be specific. Okay. Counties that have military bases. After the end of the Cold War, most of the military bases throttled down from full-time active bases to reserve bases and Air National Guard kind bases, Army National Guard bases. Okay. That's important to keep in mind. Some lady took National UFO Reporting Center back in the 70s, and yeah, she saw clusters around military bases. But back in those days, there were a lot of those Air Force bases were SAC bases. They had nuclear weapons. And Lou Alessandro and I have had a long conversation about this. ET seems to be very interested in our advanced technology, aka our nuclear weapons. So where are they tracking around now? The bases that store them and the fleets that carry them. That's why the Nimitz and all these aircraft carrier groups get followed by ET, because they got the nuclear weapons on board. Okay. And if they're doing anything out in the ocean, they're probably tracking our nuclear submarines that have the missiles. Okay. Now, let's go to influencers. That might answer the rest of your question. Proximity to bodies of water. People came to me after the first book and said, Cheryl, Texas has twice the population. Again, they're thinking population. Twice the population of Florida. How come Florida's got more numbers? Well, we figured out 1,200 miles of coastline versus 450 in Texas. Okay. Look at the Great Lakes states. The states that all touched the Great Lakes had sightings in the many thousands over 20 years. Moved 2 states away and it fell into the low hundreds. Okay.
A couple of questions I want to ask you about. During the daytime, they don't see too many. You talk about the hours.
Well, they see them, but it just doesn't, it isn't the maximum period of time. Right. Go ahead.
Do they cloak themselves? Are they invisible during the day, and at night they shine and there's a light with them? Could that be why they see more at night?
No. It's access to human eyes to see them.
Okay.
You got it. Again, it's about human activity. You got to be outside. It's got to be nice. February is the worst month of the year for sightings. Who knew? Okay.
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, it can't be all about this light stuff. I said, go to Alaska in the summer and look at their summer numbers. Okay. Their numbers are in the dead of winter and spring and fall. In the summertime, when it's white nights, it's daytime all the time. I've worked at those higher latitudes. It's daylight all day long.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
And their numbers are, in fact, it's coming up on May. They're just going to be able to bury the winter's dead now. The tundra is going to thaw.
Right.
But
the big skeeters come out.
that too. But the deal is with Alaska was it's all light all the time, and their numbers literally tanked in the summertime. The only other place that looks like that with the numbers tanking over the months is the deep south states like Florida, Texas, Georgia. It's too hot to be outside, so the numbers fall off. Okay, you go to New York State or New England states or any of the northern states in the Midwest, and the numbers are like this. There's a quiescent amount of numbers all year long at some lower level, and then June, July, August, it peaks up like this. Okay, we thought it was like that every place. And no, you come down to the middle level states like Virginia, Maryland, and go across the country, and those numbers come down. And get down deep south states, it's statistically flat, and there's a little bump in the bottom where it's too hot in the summertime to be out. And I lived in Maryland. You're a victim of air conditioning from April to October. So, it's that kind of thing. But let's talk about influencers. Proximity to water. My friend, you've got to get Tom Conwell on. He's another New York State researcher, paranormal guy, but he does good UFO research. Mm-hmm. He took our data and said they're interested in our toxic waste dumps. not necessarily nuclear. They're looking at dead coal mines, dead oil fields, dead gas fields, strip mines, all that kind of stuff. They're really interested in our waste areas. Okay. He tracked it to that. The other thing he tracked it to was geological faults. If you give an example, he tracked them all to all the major geological faults in the United States. Last summer, remember Georgia was having an earthquake about every other week last summer?
Yes.
Every time I'd hear it on the radio, I'd pop up the database and look up the county they said it was in, and it was always one of the top counties. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Just
so
like San Andreas fault line in California.
Yeah, or the caldera out there in Yellowstone, you know. Okay, so you've got geological faults. The other one was, this was an influencer. And Blue Book found this. It was called high visibility media reports. And what this is they said if there was a sighting on Tuesday, there would be a flurry of sighting reports on Wednesday, Thursday, and they thought it was like copycat effect. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What we found, and we had plenty of time to do it during 2020 because we like all dressed up, no place to go. So I had a lot of time to pore over things. We found out looking at National UFO Reporting Center data. There are some of these, when you talk about hotspots, I've identified about 700 one-day hotspots. Not a place you can set your clock by them. Oh, they show up every Saturday night here. No, it's one of these places that nothing ever happens there. An example, 16 April 2008, Indiana. It's a state that averages 2, maybe 3 sightings a week. Okay? Tops. That April 16, 2008, they had 25 in one day, and it was clustered, okay, between two major counties and about 10 zip codes. Okay. What we learned from that was we looked at that data in National UFO Reporting Center, and we noticed that, yes, there was a flurry of sighting reports after local news reports about this thing that came to be known as the Kokomo Lights. Okay. And we noticed that there was a flurry of reports in the days following the immediate press coverage. But when we looked at those reports, they were retro reports. Oh, honey, I saw the article in the paper that told us that, you know, we could report these things to the National UFO Reporting Center. Maybe we should tell about that one from 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago. That's what it turned out to be. Interesting stuff. Isn't data research interesting?
Yeah, it is. And it's a lot of work. And I know you two have done so much work. I wanted to ask you about beachfront property in the Great Lakes having a lot of sightings near water. Do you think there's underwater bases? Is that where they're coming from?
I couldn't tell you. I don't have data to support it. I don't have any USO information.
Okay.
It's almost nobody does. Okay, they're rare. The information is rare. But if you think about the fact that people see lots of them around the Great Lakes, yeah. Okay. There were lots of them around. I did one for a story for New York when I was writing my newspaper column. I went and analyzed the St. Lawrence Seaway from the top of New York State down into the middle part of Lake Erie. I looked at the Hudson Valley, just the counties that touch the Hudson Valley, the Hudson River, and the Finger Lakes. Okay. And they represented it was 72% of the sightings in New York State. Okay. Water again. Water's a big deal. USOs have been reported. Oh, by the way, you know, people used to say Lake Erie effect. Oh, yeah, that's where they are, western frontier of New York State. We found out that, oh, by the way, Monroe County, which is Lake Ontario. In fact, the researchers in New York were looking at it and said, holy God, Cheryl, maybe there's a Lake Ontario effect we didn't know about, you know. The other one that we found out about is people say Hudson Valley, that's where all the sightings are. No, ground zero for UFOs in New York State is Suffolk County, Long Island.
Wow. That's
what the
property, yeah.
If you watch the CSI program, Grissom will tell you, follow the data.
Yeah.
Follow the evidence.
I just keep thinking about the military. They've had these secret programs off and on since the early 50s about studying UFOs, or UAPs as they call them now. Do you some studies like you have, and they're just not telling you, Cheryl?
Maybe. But remember, I want you to keep an eyeball on this. When the Nimitz guys experienced that stuff in the early 2000s,
Mhm.
they didn't report it into anybody. The Pentagon has dozens of these little intelligence groups that study specific things. Had any of those UFOs had a Russian symbol or logo on it or a Chinese, they would have been all over it. But because it was a UFO report, they wouldn't touch it. Oh, they didn't want to soil their hands with the stigma. Okay.
Yes.
Dr. Condon, who did that report to Congress in 1968, shut down Blue Book, shut down and founded MUFON, so to speak.
Yeah, he's a sellout.
Hey, the T-shirt says,
Yeah.
doing the Air Force's job since 1969,
Yeah, you should
Okay.
have your own T-shirt and say, I did the research,
I've got one that says UFO statistics guru,
There you
so.
go. Yeah,
Okay. So the deal, okay, let's go back there for a minute. If they were studying, then it had to be in a deep, dark program. Nobody knew about it. But you hear them talking about it now. The only thing they were really monitoring is sensitive. If you look at the ONDI report, sightings that sound, the people calling me up, Cheryl, the ONDI report, they only reported like 500 sightings. Yeah, those 500, there's got to be a bigger number. I said 500 on around, read the fine print, around sensitive airspace, AKA special bases, the White House, something like that. Okay.
Mhm.
I was a military analyst. I collected data around those kinds of sites myself. So
But
I understand.
You're still under secrecy, though. You can't talk.
I have to take it to my grave.
Yeah.
Okay. That was one of the heavy points with learning things. None of my stuff, I can honestly say this, none of my stuff was related to UFOs. Okay. I just collected electronic data and photographic data on everybody else. Okay. Now, the last thing you got to know, generational effect. This is something we discovered. We're still trying to prove it, but the data seems to support it. Los Angeles, #1 county in the country for sightings. Grandpa told us about the Battle of LA in February of 1942. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something.
Yeah.
Okay. Go to Maricopa County, Arizona. Mom and Dad told us about the Phoenix Lights in 97. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something. There seems to be a cultural imperative to look up. Okay. Because the folklore says, wow, we had something. Maybe they'll come back, that kind of thing.
Cheryl, how many people do you think are starting to be enlightened? Even with your information, you and Linda's information, your books you got, this should tell people, this should help support what actually the military and Pentagon's talking about this is real. And there's still a lot of people out there that just don't believe it. What can you tell them?
The poll, okay, in 2012 timeframe, there was a poll that said that the old polls in the early 2000s, 2012, 2015 timeframe, the polls said 36% believe in UFOs, 42% think are on the fence, and 17% think it's all hogwash. Okay, that's what they used to say. Okay, in 2017, Fox Pictures had produced a horror movie. They set it against the Phoenix Lights, but it was an abduction film. Okay, horror abduction film. These 5 or 6 teenagers were never heard from again, kind of thing. They did a poll to help support their publicity, and they came back with the same numbers at 33, 35%, 42%, and about 15, 16% thing. But they asked an additional question, and it was, have you ever seen a UFO? And the data said 16.74% of adult Americans say they've seen a UFO. Didn't report them, but said they saw one. Well, when I ran that number back against 2010 census numbers, the number would have been about 43 million people, give or take a couple 100,000. Okay. About 43 million people would have been that 16% of adult Americans. But that number doesn't match up with 167,632 reports. I didn't trust the metric. And 2 years later, in 2019, Gallup poll does the same set. Came back with the same run numbers, for believers and sitting on the fence and think it's hogwash. But they asked that question, and they came back with that 16.74% as well. So I really sat down and started playing with the numbers, and I had all kinds of spreadsheets playing with the numbers. Okay. And what we came up with was, and you tried to do it against the national number, it fell apart. It just didn't make any sense. But if you went back, took the census numbers, that 16.74% of adult numbers, one for every single state in the country, and then work it back against their reported sightings based on our reported sighting data, 2 databases, you end up with a bell curve. On one end, there's 1 in 450 people reports what they see. On the other end, it was 1 in about 150 people reports what they see. And the top of the bell curve hovered up around 1 in 255, 200. And the number we publish these days is 1 in 257 people reports what they see. Now, there's folklore out there that says, 10% of people see a UFO and 10% of them report a UFO. That's been the folk tale in the UFO community, 10 and 10.
No, okay? That doesn't make any sense. It don't.
And I've tried those numbers, and the numbers don't work against reported sightings or anything else we've done. So by again cranking against population using that poll metric, which is considered very accurate, I cranked it a dozen ways, and the only thing that worked was this bell curve, doing each individual state separately and then adding the numbers up, and then the model held.
That's why you did the 50 states. They try to break it down into a little bit.
Okay, let's get into that. Okay. All right, so we did all our scientific research that's in the front of these individual state books. If you're just want to look up your town, it's going to be in the back of the book. Okay, there's a little part about that individual state, where a county map with numbers, and then we also do a map of the state by the zip codes. Now, that's an interesting phenomenon. People say, what does that tell us? Well, one thing it tells us is that even in a big city, you might not see the sightings. Here in Ohio, you get on down Cleveland, there's a stretch of zip codes right along the edge of the lake. Nothing. Okay. Again, remember I said move away out into the suburbs. Yes. Okay. There they are. Okay. So when you just printed out a map of the state, it looked like Swiss cheese. Okay. You make the color for the ones that had sightings and ones for didn't have a sighting, didn't have any color. It looks like Swiss cheese. Okay. It's weird.
When I was a kid, Cheryl, I saw 2 UFOs when I was 13, 14 years old. Now, are there age demographics in your books?
No, neither database seems to, if they have it, they're not sharing it. Okay, MUFON didn't want to share it for confidentiality reasons, and heck, I reached out to the New Fork people originally and said, can you turn on like county data in your reporting? We don't even collect it. Put a pin in the map, they said. Okay. But
where is the best place, Cheryl, to report a UFO if you've seen one?
MUFON, you can do it with MUFON. They have the best investigators. But if you want this thing to roll up so people can publicly access the data, report it to the National UFO Reporting Center. Actually, it's about a 60-40 ratio. MUFON's data is about 40%, and New Fork's data is about 60% of the total data. And that's a pretty solid model. Like I said, I had a mathematical model, and that's what I built the model based on that. So it's been a lot of work. Now the state books, it's called the UFO State Statistics Series. Okay. If you look up just any book up there that is UFOs in, we'll say UFOs in Ohio and where to find them. Again, use that whole sentence when you do the search in Amazon, not on Google. Okay. If you just go into Amazon's book search area, but UFOs and whatever the name of your state, UFOs and where to find them, that book will come right up in front of you. Now, if you want to look at other states, and I've had people say, I want to get all the states that are around my state. I tell them, just click on that little hyperlink there in the write-up about the book for the UFO state statistics series, and Amazon will show you the entire list of 50 books. My warning to everybody, again, there are no sighting stories in these books. This is scientific data research. Now, if you want the Guinness Book of Records kind of aspect of it, yes, the last part of the book is tables that start with your county, zip code, and then down to your by zip code down to your local burg. And then what you'll see is the shapes that was seen for that county and what years they were in. Not dates, but what years, how many were in each year, 2001, 2020. That's what's in there. And so that's the deal. It's the best information anywhere. If you got people in your family don't believe this stuff exists, you want to blow their socks off, get this book. 10, 12, 15 bucks, 20 bucks at the worst with the California and top 10 books. But it's the best data anywhere.
I looked it up on UFOs in Illinois, and that's where I live. And I got the information here and some of the notes, but I won't go into that. I'd rather listen to what your final thoughts.
Illinois is in the top 15, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Chicago even?
Well, Illinois, yeah. But Cook County is in the top 20 counties in the country.
Really?
Remember, 3,135 counties. I think Cook County is upwards in the top 20 counties, somewhere in the top 20 counties. I know it is, maybe even in the top 10.
So do you think that these UAPs or UFOs, as we call them, do you think they're interested in population centers, Cheryl? What are they wanting to find out about the population centers?
They're anthropologists. Think about it that way. Okay, let's go study the primitives. And people say, well, why don't they land on the White House lawn? That would mess up their model. That would be like landing a helicopter in an Amazon village, that's never seen a white man before. Yeah, okay, that's the problem. So, you don't want to spoil things.
So we're just a zoo here, and they're observing.
No. Didn't say that.
I know you didn't say that. I just
no, don't say that.
Okay.
No, you can learn a lot by watching a different culture. Okay, think about it. Read a book on anthropology. You'll get a good sense of it. It's learning to analyze their culture. And I'll give you an example. There was a guy from the Smithsonian that spent 20 years embedded with the Zuni Indians out in New Mexico. Okay. And he wrote, there were pictures of him with the other tribal guys. He was dressed just like they were, everything like this. And he wrote in one of his papers to the Smithsonian, I have been with them 20 years. I stand with them, but I am not one of them. Okay. Understand, there are people who, hey, look, unless they're really weird looking, E.T. walks among us on the street, guys.
I know that. Yes.
Don't think they all look like Chewbacca or look like what was his name there, the goofy guy on one of the Star Wars things that nobody liked. But everybody thinks they got to look weird. There's a lot of humanoids out there, and they walk among us on the street, and you would never know it.
Right. I've ran into a few of them. I think I asked you that question one other time before, a couple of years ago when we talked. And have you run into a few, I guess, people that just didn't seem like they fit in, but they were humanoid, Cheryl? Oh, okay. I see the secrecy there.
No, I don't want to say it that way. It's not so much secrecy as, do I need to say it? Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
I know I have. Yes.
You know what pisses me off?
Yeah.
I'm saying, you go into the UFO sites and you do a search on reptilians, and they always show you this color artwork they did, and it's always these big, muscular guy looks like he needs a big case of prunes in the worst way. That kind of thing. Like he's going to tear you apart.
Yeah.
They're okay. Everybody I have interviewed that has had a encounter with a reptilian or a friendly relationship with a reptilian. They are gentle. They are soft-spoken. They are quite enlightened, and they have an incredible sense of humor. And they have been with us since the garden.
Ah, yes.
Who told Eve you're better than this?
Yeah.
Okay. If you Google pictures of Samaria and look at the artwork, you will see figurines holding babies, suckling babies, and they're clearly reptilian humanoids.
Right.
They have been with us, but we've had a religious culture that has demonized, oh, the snake, the reptilian in the dragon in the garden. Oh my God, that's the devil. So it's been talked down. But if anybody encouraged us to be all we can be, it was them.
I get your point because I've been studying it. I got a book that's called Angels and Supernatural Beings, and I've done a lot of research on that. And I hear you, and I'm very interested. I know you have a lot to say about that, but we're closing.
That's a completely different show. If you want to get me on that show, you want to get me on the show and talk about consciousness. I lived in a Buddhist monastery for 7 years, baby. Okay. I can talk to you about consciousness.
We got it. Yeah, we're going to do that. Okay. I love doing it.
Once more with the book. The book.
Go with
50 state series on Amazon. Go to Amazon book search. Get in there, book search, and say whatever the name of your state is. UFOs in your state and where to find them. You will find the book. They'll have it to you in 3 or 4 days.
Okay, good. And you still sell the big pink.
The desk reference is up there. The pink book is the most up to date. UFO Sightings Desk Reference 2001 to 2020. If you want to read all 238 of my newspaper articles, there's one up there called the UFO Beat. In fact, if you just want to go up there and say Cheryl Costa UFO, boom, you'll get hit with 54 books.
You got other books too. That's still out there.
I'm a published playwright. I'm a published mystery writer. I'm a published science fiction writer. A bunch of stuff. In fact, I'm working on a science fiction novel right now. Blow your socks off.
So am I. Yes, I'm jealous of you though. You are so. Oh my gosh, both you and Linda both are scholars, and I really love it.
I have a good piece of news for you.
What's that?
People say, "Well, is anybody going to pay attention to your stuff after you're dead?" State University of New York at Albany took my papers.
Good.
And everything we're doing right now, we send, whenever we publish a book, we send a copy, a full printed copy and the original manuscript. We just keep shipping them. They pay for it. We just ship it to them. They're still collecting stuff from me, but they took 25 crate loads of stuff out of my garage 2 years ago when we were moving to Ohio. Wow.
So you're like these famous artists. Your artwork is going to be probably better after you're gone, right?
We're going to be Linda will tell you very frankly, we're going to be Van Goghs, baby. Very famous. Well, hey, the guy at Albany told me, he says, Cheryl, somebody's going to get a master's he looked through our stuff. And he says, somebody is going to get a master's or a PhD out of your stuff 50 years after you're dead.
There you go. I love having you on the show. This is Cheryl Costa on the show.
Anytime, Dave.
Yeah. Great. United Public Radio Network, FM 105.3 and 107.7 globally from beautiful New Orleans. Strange Reality with Dave Emmons and the wonderful Cheryl Costa and her spouse, Linda Costa. Both great writers. I love them. And listen also to UFO Paranormal Radio, which is in the same network. Thank you and being with us. And I love doing this show with Cheryl. There you go. I don't know if I can do that with my fingers. I got corporal tunnel. Gosh. Okay, great. All right. Good night or good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thanks.